Okay, I am delighted to welcome you to our next session at the 2022 FoodTreX Research Summit. And Andrea Pozzi is our next presenter, and he will be speaking about creativity and gastronomy, what travelers want. So, Andrea, without further ado, please take over.
Thank you very much, Eric, for giving me this opportunity to present my work. Allow me to share my screen
I've just allowed it, sorry.
Yeah. Now I think that you can see my slide, my presentation. Is that right?
Yes, we see it fine.
Okay, perfect. So let's start me to introduce my work, which deals with creativity and gastronomy in tourism, what travelers want. This is a study that tries to segment travelers on the basis of creative needs. So that let's try me to introduce the background of the study. I mean, we introduced the terms such gastronomy and creativity, and I need to better contextualize what I would like to do in the study. So let's allow me to define, first of all, the creativity. There are many definitions about creativity, but there's a general consensus that creativity is the ability to produce something new and meaningful or useful, starting from existing knowledge. Well, in this case, I mean that creativity is not something related to the creative genius like Beethoven, Mozart, but creativity is something that all of us have and that can be used in many different disciplines and also in tourism. What about creativity in tourism? So this word has become very popular since the beginning of the new millennium, and it has been viewed as a resource for destination to add value to the entire experience, which contribute to the innovation of the tourism experience. But there are many different authors that talk about creativity in tourism. It is important to distinguish two types of creativity because many of us have already heard about creative tourism. Creative tourism is just an expression of creativity in tourism. As you can see in the slide, creativity can act as a background activity. I mean, it is a resource that can be exploited within the industry and used to create added value products and services. For example, some creative reinvention of traditional recipes done by renowned chefs. This is an example of creativity as background activity. Or creativity can also act as a focal activity. I mean that it is a co-created experience which involves end-on activities. In this case, there is a mutual exchange between the travelers and suppliers. When creativity acts as a focal activity, we have this so-called creative tourism. So some examples are for cooking classes or other workshops related to art or artisan, pottery, and so on. So let's try to investigate what interlinkages there are between gastronomy, tourism, and creativity, because there are many authors that recalls creativity among an expression or an experience within this practice. So all we know that gastronomy tourism is a travel to get the sense of the place and the society through the medium of food, beverage, related activities. This is my own interpretation of many different definition, including also the one of World Food Travel Association from Eric. So we can gain different types of experience from consuming gastronomy. Gastronomy tourism can be a pleasurable experience, for example, during wine tastings, can be a whole experience. As we heard from Robert in the previous presentation, there are many wineries, farms that are offering relaxation and mindful courses in the vineyards. But gastronomy tourism also concerns social molding, the creation of new relationship, like happens when we dine at the restaurant with family and friends or other people. Gastronomy tourism can also allow us to get the sense of the place. For example, during food tours, we can gain knowledge and also get the sense of specific destination. But gastronomy tourism also related to creativity. As a background activity, when we have novel creative culinary options, as a focal activities with hands-on activities like cooking classes. So there are many interlinkages. This is one that I would like to present during the conference. But of course, let's move to the perspective of travelers, because my presentation focuses on the consumer's viewpoint. So as you can see in the slides, the consumption of creative tourism activities can translate into a passive or active experience. Passive, when creativity acts as background activity, we have a more consumptive activity or experience, like dining at restaurants, offering a novel creative culinary option, reshaping the traditional recipes, and also dishes. And in this case, this kind of experiences provide tourists a sense of pleasure and also enrich their knowledge about traditional food and innovative cooking methods. As you can see, it is more a passive experience. But when a creativity acts as a focal activity, we have a co-created experience. I mean that both the traveler and the supplier act together and create their own experience. So there's a direct involvement on the part of travelers. And in this case, creativity, and specifically creative gastronomy tourism, can satisfy the need of travelers for being involved, interact with locals and suppliers, and learn by doing. I mean, get knowledge that can be also spent at home, as sometimes happen with cooking classes. But let's move to the assumption and the hypothesis of my study. So the starting assumption coming from the review of creative tourism literature is that travelers participate in creative activities like artisan workshop, cooking class, etc., as to fulfill their needs of involvement, interaction, and learning. These three needs are the ones that are at the core of the creative tourism experience. And also the same studies that define these needs found a positive association between the creative needs and travelers' behavior. So those who express higher needs of involvement, interaction, and learning are more likely to consume more often creative tourism activity. So we are talking about creative gastronomy tourism, so a specific discipline, a specific branch of creative tourism. So I ask myself, if tourists who express a reasonable high level of involving interaction and learning consume more often both types of creative gastronomy activities, I mean, for example, dining at restaurants offering novel culinary experiences and also cooking classes and more hands-on activities. This is the first research question. The second is if this group can be recognized as a distinct market segment. Of course, it is a crucial question because if this segment can be recognized as a specific group with homogeneous travel partners, we have to define specific actions to capture their attention and also to involve them into this kind of activity. So let's try me to summarize what are the main aims of my study. They are similar to the previous. I mean, the study aims at evaluating to what extent the need for involvement, interaction, and learning influence travelers' participation in creative gastronomy activities, and also determining whether a segmentation based on the above-mentioned needs reveals a distinct market segment to push. Allow me to briefly introduce methodology because it is something different, because creative tourism studies decided to opt for on-site investigation. I mean, they consider only travelers participating in creative tourism activities in specific site, especially in Taiwan. And this approach, of course, it is very useful, but it can be considered quite limitative because it does not allow to evaluate this willingness to participate among the general population. So I decided to carry out a nationwide survey on 1,003 Italian travelers aged more than 18 years old. I used, in this case, pre-pandemic data just for one main reason. So more recent researches on tourism and also on gastronomy tourism have revealed that the participation in these years from 2020 has lowered. So in my opinion, it has been very, very important try to consider something in the pre-pandemic period just to avoid any bias or any influence coming from the current scenario. So respondents were asked to express their level of agreement using a Likert scale on 17 proposals that can potentially fulfill their creative needs. So we will, of course, see this after. And they were asked to indicate to which of 16 gastronomy tourism activities they are participated in. And of course, to create segment, I decided to perform a hierarchical cluster analysis according to their tendencies towards involving interactive and learning proposal and media creative needs. Allow me to show briefly the graphic of the samples. You can see in one column, you can find the percentage related to geographical region of origin, generation, again, the relationship, status, education, occupation of the sample of the study and the general population. As you can see, of course, there are few differences because the full sample consider only people aged over 18 and also only travelers, not all individuals, but there are many positive associations. So our sample can be considered representative of the entire population. So they can give me many information and reliable information. Let's move to the result that is the most important thing. So the cluster analysis on the creative need reveals 3 different homogeneous segments. I call it as creative seekers, creative enthusiasts, and passive travelers. Creative seekers are those showing the highest level in terms of involvement, interaction, and learning. So they have a strong willingness to find proposals that help to fulfill their creative attitudes. For example, cooking classes or living like a day as a brew maker or a wine maker or olive oil maker. The creative enthusiast, it's a middle group, they display similar attitudes to creative seeker, but less explicitly because the values, the mean values tend to be lower. The last group is the so-called passive travelers, because these tourists show a low willingness to participate in engaging and interactive proposals. They are all interested in learning about the food specialties and tradition of the destination. So just a part of the creative gastronomy tourism. So these are the three different segments, and each segment, as you can see, I can also provide you many data before, after this presentation, because it is quite difficult to put everything within a slide, but these three groups have specific behaviors and attitudes. So let's move to evaluate the participation in gastronomic activities of the three segments: creative seeker, creative enthusiasts, and passive travelers, and also the food sample. What can be found is that the creative seeker not only participate more often in the so-called creative gastronomic activities, like attending a cooking class, and also, for example, eating at a fine dining or gourmet restaurant. But in all gastronomy tourism activities, this is important things. That these creative seekers appears like the so-called omnivorous. They would like to find not just they are interested in, but a wide range of gastronomic activities. I think this is very important because, of course, moving to the discussions, these findings show that, of course, the creative needs influence the participation of travelers in creative gastronomic activities. And this participation varies according to the strength of such needs. But as I just mentioned, the group of creative seekers cannot be recognized as a distinct market segment because they participate in a wide range of gastronomic activities. So they are looking towards proposals that fulfill their needs of participation, engagement, learning, and this is very important. So viewing this group as a distinct market segment appears partially inaccurate. And this means that if this group cannot be recognized as a specific market segment, we have to shift our attention from the creative activity or product to the process. This group can be wider than what I find in my research. Of course, we need more researchers in this topic, but to appeal and to captivate the audience of travelers, it is important to communicate not that our product is creative, but how we created this product. So this means to involve the traveler into the co-creation process, so to avoid any barriers between the tourists and the suppliers, and to explain and to introduce him about the food, the heritage, and we need to stimulate travelers to use their creativity during our experience. It is, I think, very important. And of course, if creativity is something that appeals to a wide range of public, using just creative gastronomic proposal as a label can be limiting, because We need to convey messages about all the opportunities that we give to travelers to express their creativity. For example, during a traditional dining experience at the gourmet restaurants, we have to introduce travelers to the creative act of the chef. It is something very difficult. We have to engage with appropriate storytelling, but we need to go on and not just label something like creative dining experience. And this also about the hands-on activities like cooking classes. We did not to call them like creative cooking activities, but we need to give the idea that travelers and the supplier can learn something together, and the traveler can do this dish alone. Also, when she come back home, it is very important because there are many destinations that are labeling themselves or activities that are labeling themselves as creative, but maybe it is limitative. It is important to convey what is exactly creativity and the creative opportunity that all travelers, not just those expressing higher level of creativity, are interested in. So this is just a part of my study. Thank you very much for your attention. If you have any question, you can, of course, write in the chat, ask it later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrea. One of the things that you were talking about, you talked about the 5 different types of experiences from consuming gastronomy, and that reminded me a lot of our psychoculinary profiling, implying that people travel for, well, they travel to seek food or drink for different reasons, whether it is culture or relaxation or health or discovery or innovation, all of those different reasons. And I do think that's an important distinction. That's also something that we covered in our 2020 Food Travel Monitor. So it's really quite important because a lot of times destinations will just send a blanket message out to all food lovers, and they won't segment things down and look at how people are traveling or why people are traveling. And for example, the Basque Country is very well known for gourmet, or certain places might be very well known for wellness retreats and the diets that go with that. Places in Arizona I'm thinking of specifically. So there are different reasons for sure, and I think it was important to identify that. What questions do you have for Andrea? He knows a lot of information, and he talks about a lot of different things. He's done a lot of different research studies. So he's one of your industry's foremost experts. Here we go. Claudia asks you, do you have a practical example where there's a creative act where the chef is communicated, where co-creation is already put into practice?
Okay, so it is quite a difficult question because in my study, I also trying to create a framework for developing creative gastronomy proposal. I've talked with different experts, and I don't have a specific example in this case, but some suggest me that it is important to avoid barriers. For example, one expert from Portugal told me about his experience in Portuguese restaurants, where, of course, it does happen also in other places, but travelers can immediately see what happens in the kitchen, so can see the chefs working. It is very important to see, because you are avoiding barriers between the travelers, the consumer, and the chefs. And it is also important to educate for example, the waiters to introduce travelers to the creative chefs. It can be used also new technology can be used. There are many examples around the world of technology restaurants. They use different devices For example, the alchemist in Singapore that create a very immersive scenario with different technologies that also introduce you with a multisensory experience to the creative experience, to the creative act of the food.
Very good. Thank you, Andrea. We have another question here from Veronique. She's asking if you have done any work on the specific area of the brain that develops creativity in order to enhance the interactivity with this knowledge.
No, unfortunately not, because I tried to review some literature, but it is very difficult for me. I'm just an expert on marketing and tourism, moving to something related to how brain use its creativity. It is something that goes beyond my competence. So
What,
I
you're not
decided.
an expert on neuro-linguistic programming? Yeah, I think that the connection between psychology and brain function and food is that's another industry. Sorry, Veronique, we can't give you an answer to that. Any other questions for Andrea? No? Okay. Andrea, thank you very much for your time. Always a pleasure to see you.
Thank you very much, Eric, for giving me this opportunity. And thank you also to all participants.
Point well noted, Veronique. Thank you. And we will see everyone in the next room in exactly 4 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.